In this video, you will learn about the impacts of Indian residential schools and child and family services on Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples are those who identify as First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. This is an introduction to complex issues. We don't cover everything, and there is much more to learn. The information in this video is based on research, newspaper articles, government documents, and other reports. Below the video, you can see a list of the sources we used to create this video. Please pay close attention as we will ask you questions about this video later. There were 14 Indian residential schools in Manitoba. RCMP officers, among others, took Indigenous children from their families to these schools. John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada, was central in creating Indian residential schools. He said the goal of the schools was to get the children severed from the tribe as much as possible and civilize them. Government policies for Indian residential schools were based on ideas that Indigenous peoples were not human and were uncivilized savages. Many white settlers thought they had to convert Indigenous peoples to Christianity. The purpose of Indian residential schools was to destroy Indigenous culture and ways of life. 4 Christian churches ran Indian residential schools: the Anglican, Presbyterian, United, and Catholic churches. The nuns and priests at the schools forbid the children from speaking their language or practicing their culture. Many of the priests and nuns working at the schools thought the Indigenous children were savages. The nuns and priests abused the children, physically, emotionally, and sexually. The government did nothing about this abuse, despite death rates as high as 69% at some schools. The way John A. Macdonald, the nuns, and priests treated Indigenous children shows that they thought Indigenous people were naturally inferior to European people. Though some children valued learning to read and write at the schools, overall, Indian residential schools were abusive and harmful. Child and Family Services ensures the safety and well-being of children in Canada. If a child isn't safe at home, they sometimes take the child away. That child might live in a foster home with a different family or a group home with other children. Across Canada, about 1 in 10 children are Indigenous, but about 5 in 10 children in care are Indigenous. In Manitoba, about 4 in 10 children are Indigenous, but 9 in 10 children in care are Indigenous. In Ontario, less than 1 in 10 children are Indigenous, but 3 in 10 children in care are Indigenous. These percentages of Indigenous children in care are significantly larger than the percentage of Indigenous children in the provinces. The issue is not that Indigenous people are bad parents. If that were the case, there would be a similar ratio of Indigenous children in care across different provinces. For example, we would not expect Manitoba and Ontario to have the same number of Indigenous children in care because the population of each province is different. But we would expect Manitoba and Ontario to have the same percentage of Indigenous children in care if the issue was Indigenous parenting styles. The difference in percentages of Indigenous children in care across provinces tells us that something else is going on. There is a problem in how the Child and Family Services system works that leads to so many Indigenous children in care, not Indigenous parenting styles. In some cases, Child and Family Services takes children without evidence of harm. For example, in 2020, a nurse in Winnipeg called Child and Family Services on Indigenous parents because they thought they heard the word shake. Child and Family Services apprehended the child even though there was no evidence that the parents had harmed the child. This is just one example of Child and Family Services employees and healthcare workers targeting Indigenous people. There are many others. For example, Indigenous people receive less federal and provincial funding for child welfare services per child than non-Indigenous people. This means Child and Family Services is more likely to take Indigenous children from their families due to underfunding. For example, many Indigenous children are removed from their families because of poverty. Increasing funding for Indigenous Child and Family Services to the same level of non-Indigenous Child and Family Services would presumably reduce this poverty and the number of Indigenous children in care. Now we are going to talk about racism and how racism was part of Indian residential schools and Child and Family Services. We can think about racism as a system. Let's think of racism like a tree. First, we plant a seed and a tree grows. Each group of branches represents a system, like the government, the Child and Family Services system, and the education system. If the seed is racist, the systems will be racist. Many of the seeds of Canada are racist. For example, early Canada created policies that welcomed many white immigrants but restricted Chinese, Black, Japanese, and Jewish immigrants. This is one example of how Canada was founded on the idea that the white race was superior to all other races. These systems are racist because white people created them at the exclusion of other peoples. These systems benefit white people and put them in a position of power and privilege in society. Because these racist systems favor white people, all white people are part of them. This is true even if a white person does not hold racist beliefs. We can call this systemic racism. Systemic racism is complex. Some researchers define systemic racism as racism embedded within our systems, such as government, education, and the Child and Family Services system. This type of racism advantages white people and disadvantages Indigenous people and people of color. Let's apply this definition of racism to what we just learned about Indian residential schools and Child and Family Services. Remember, the Canadian government created Indian residential schools based on ideas that Indigenous people were not human and were uncivilized savages. Based on this definition of racism, that racism is embedded in our systems to advantage white people and disadvantage Indigenous people and people of color, the educational and governmental systems were racist. For example, the government policies that made Indian residential schools possible were racist. So was how the government ignored evidence of widespread abuse. We can do the same for Child and Family Services. Here, the Child and Family Services system is racist because it is more likely to take Indigenous children from their families and because Indigenous people receive less funding per child for child welfare services than non-Indigenous people. These are just two examples of racism toward Indigenous peoples in Canada. There are many other examples, such as racial profiling, Indigenous incarceration rates, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and forced sterilization of Indigenous women. It's normal to feel sad, surprised, uncomfortable, or angry after learning about racism in Canada. It is okay to feel this way. And there are things you can do about racism in Canada. One of the things you can do is learn about Indigenous peoples. Learning about Indigenous peoples is important. Residential school survivors, researchers, and the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, the organization that houses residential school survivor testimonies, all agree that a great way to challenge racism toward Indigenous peoples is to learn more about Indigenous peoples. So we created a mini-series of 5 5-minute videos to help people learn more about Indigenous peoples. We think you will find it interesting and a good learning opportunity. We cover the following topics: stereotypes about Indigenous peoples, Shoal Lake water in Manitoba, Indigenous perspectives on environmentalism, racism at the University of Manitoba, and how to be an ally to Indigenous peoples. You can sign up later in this study.